Welcome to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We are so excited to have you joining us on this journey where we explore different ways to empower your soul, whether it's healing in your kitchen or all the way up in the corporate world. Come with us as we look into different ways to heal your mind, body, and soul.
Hey everyone, it's Catherine from Willow Healing, and I'm so excited today to have Asher Cloran with me. He's the current director of Life Rocks and is a passionate advocate for earth science education and holistic health and childhood development. He's an author of books for parents, teachers, and aims at connecting children with nature and improving family and personal health outcomes. He's the co-creator of the Soil Education Kit and the Soil Book, as well as holistic lifestyle coaching and integrative movement specialist with the C.H.E.K Institute. So welcome, Asher, and thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Catherine. Thanks so much for having me on. It's awesome to have a chat with a like mind.
So I know that a lot of what you do is being really passionate with nature and getting kids connected into nature, and that you're trying to bring this back into the education systems. So do you want to expand a little bit more on that?
Totally. I think the everyday consensus for most people is that the education system is not perfect. And that imperfection lies very much in the fact that we focus on academic outcomes. We're doing intensive grading to try and sort everyone into the right categories and set them up for a career. And the whole focus of the current modern education compulsory schooling system is centered around career and academic outcome. But to anyone paying attention, that road leads to burnt out children who are not experiencing childhood, who are skipping out on developmental milestones and goals. They're skipping out on social development and goals and milestones. And this excess focus on academia is leaving children without being connected to the nature of themselves and the nature of the earth, which then leads to disconnection later on in life, depression, poor health, and other outcomes that are not positive. So, the most extreme representation of that would be like the Chinese, basically like factory schooling. They're pumping students out, they're overworked. These students are working 18 hours a day, with their extracurricular activities on top of it, and it's no way to be. So that's basically where Life Rocks is coming from, is there's a problem out there. Children aren't having the childhood that generations before remember. Technology also plays a big part in this, and the pushing of tech giants into schooling, which we can cover as well. But yeah, that's the general theme of things.
Yeah, and I know working as a speech therapist, a lot of kids definitely by the time they're in year 6 are burnt out and they're tired, and they often miss the fundamentals as well, because there's this big push to make everything faster and learn more, but they just miss out on those basic elements of going outside. And so many kids come into the clinic, and I just say to the parents, please just take their shoes off and go and walk on the ground and let them be. And then there's also this, over extension of needing to always be busy. Like they'll be at school Monday to Friday. After school, nearly every day they'll have some sort of training or swimming or art class or music class. And then they get to the weekend and they're still going, when do they actually get to breathe? And when do they get to be just children? So I guess that's the biggest thing I've noticed, and that shift that you were saying, like all those long-term issues of actually being in this environment where they're continually being pushed and pushed and pushed.
Yeah, I mean, children aren't meant to be pushed through childhood. And if we do, we're missing out on the most important thing, which is that this person is growing at a rapid rate, at a rate that will never happen again. And if we miss, 1 year of that development process, and I'm talking children here from acutely from 0 to 7, as we know, is the most rapid developmental process. And then the next is from 7 through to 21, which is where the brain is really, finalizing its growth patterns and laying down its branches and all the habits, its beliefs,
programs,
life values.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's not meant to be pushed. It's meant to be understood and nurtured, not something to be, oh yeah, I understand that, but let's do all this other stuff that's apparently more important than proper human development, which honestly, like, that should be the focus of what we're thinking about. How do we grow? How do we evolve? How do we process information? And then how do we set ourselves up for life in childhood?
Yeah, and even when you said like that but statement, like that keeps coming up as a big thing, because when we use the word but, it actually takes away the power from what we're actually trying to achieve. And I've been doing this Watch Your Words course, and that was a big thing. And I find myself catching the but, because it does. It takes away. It's like, oh, I love you, but. Well,
Yeah.
hey, that discounts that. Or you can be a child, but you need to do this.
Yeah.
So you're taking away that power to just be. And I guess that's where it comes back to nature as well, because if you can just be, often when we go back to nature, we can just be.
Yeah, and like, people who don't get any time in nature and they're just shuttling from one thing to the other, they don't have an identity themselves. They are being filled with someone else's idea for their identity. And as a child who's trying to find their identity, like, they're trying to form an identity separate to their parents. They're trying to come to an understanding of their own values, their own goals in life. Like, if you keep a child busy all the way through their childhood, they're going to end up being a young adult when, school's saying, okay, you've got your HSC now out you go into the world and, like, try to be a big success. What foundation have we given them to understand themselves deeply enough to run their life?
Yeah, and I guess that's too where, like, that when do they have time to heal and breathe and learn about themselves and really tap into their inner wisdom. And a lot of that comes from being outside and breathing, and just the power of breathing and just stopping to breathe. There's so much stuff coming out with that now too.
Yeah, breathing, nature time, but even like a simpler version of thinking about it all is space and time. Like, not having everything full, not having everything on a schedule. This comes back to free play, which has been, a contested topic in education for many years, where there was an old school approach of like, there's like, playtime is just time wasted. We've got to fill their head full of the maths class and then the English class and then the music class and then the sports class. Well, actually, we show that all the behavioral issues come down, all the learning outcomes go up, all the engagement metrics go up a lot when that child has had a decent, and I'm talking like even 1 to 2 hours of uninhibited, uninterrupted, uncontrolled, uncontrived playtime outside. And that, that the evidence shows that all of those issues that we're trying to fix through medication, through counseling, through behavioral therapy, free play in nature fixes that stuff. So what's going on there?
Well, even in terms of free play, not just in nature, but being in the classroom. When I was in kindy, I still remember my favourite part of the day was after lunch, because we'd have free play every day for a good hour. And we would have, dress ups, and there was puppets, and there was doll houses. And this is in kindergarten. This isn't, later on or things like that. And that was my most favourite memory. But it also let me just be, it let us have that imagination and that time. And, there's a lot of push towards writing, and I know that with like a lot of the assessments now, they're pushing them to go online, and writing's kind of fading out. But at the same time, they want the kids to be creative. But how do they be creative if they don't get the chance to be creative? in their own play, because that's often what fosters the imagination, and then it flows through to what comes out in their literacy as well.
Yeah. I was even thinking about this in terms of my own life the other day. Like, I love writing, and I love writing science fiction, but the more of other people's stories I read, the less my story taps on my shoulder. So before I begin a process of writing, I go on a reading fast.
Oh, wow. I
Where,
love that.
not absorbing other stories and this sort of thing. So, yeah, at a simple level, if you don't have any space in your life, the creative parts of life, the wondrous parts of life, there's no time for curiosity. There's no time for wonder. It's just go, go, go. You're on a schedule. You're in the rat race. And yeah, that's not how we want our kids to be raised.
Yeah, and I guess that, both of us coming from a perspective where we work with kids and we want them to be in nature more, when you do get them out there and you get them involved, they love it. Like, it's just pure love and wonderment.
Yeah.
And just like, wow, look at this ant on the leaf,
Yeah.
and you can look at that ant doing its thing for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And they're not, there's no attention issues, there's no need to run off, there's nothing like that, because their attention is engaged and they want to learn about it.
Yeah.
And they're so rapt about it. And even I'll often channel through stories from nature that they want me to share with the kids when I'm working with them. And the kids are enraptured and they just want to know what happens. They don't, they're just like, oh, and then what? And I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's keep going. And then we'll go exploring to try and find things in nature that shows that story that came through. And, that's something that's very much missing, especially with playtimes getting reduced in the playground and being allowed to run outside, or, you can run outside, but these are the rules.
Yeah.
There's still restrictions on what they can do.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I think helicopter parenting, that kind of approach, the climate of a modern, the modern world can impress a fair bit of fear on the parents. And then that kind of instinctual, reactive response is protect, protect, protect. But then that parent who also is in the rat race, who also hasn't got enough time to slow down and think, okay, what are the values? What are the priorities? Like, what are we missing? What's really real? If they're driven by those anxieties and those fears, that leads to like the helicopter parenting style, which leads to a doubling down of no free play, no free time, no free thoughts. That child is on the schedule, they're being watched, so their mum or whoever the main helicopter parent takes up a fair bit of real estate in that child's head as well.
Yeah, and even I've caught myself doing that being a mum,
Right.
where Zach, my little one, he's like running along these rocks, and I'm like, because it's like, a 2-story drop next to the edge of where he's running. But I also then catch myself and think, if I stop what he's doing, he's actually more likely to fall, because he's got this balance, he's done this before, and even we had to retrain my husband and I to let him play with sticks.
Yeah.
Because sticks were like, no, you can't pick up sticks and play with them, and we had to really retrain ourselves to catch ourselves in that minute and not be in that program that we were taught that, nature's dangerous and scary. Rather, it's like, just let it be. And I think of snakes as a classic example, because so many people are fearful of snakes.
Yeah.
But, if you just often pause and stand still and take a breath, the snake will go away, right? And you talk to like some of the leading snake catchers and they're like, you just got to be calm around them, And so, that's another thing too, because my grandmother taught me, if a snake comes after you, run away in a zigzag. It's like the worst advice you could have given. So it's about that reprogramming to be okay with what our surroundings are and letting ourselves just be. So
Yeah.
and then
It reminds me of another one. My partner Jessie said her mum was always saying, don't pick up feathers because feathers have bird viruses on them. And that was something my mum said to me as well. But like, rewind 20 years later, like, Jessie collects bird feathers. That's just what she likes. And she hasn't got any bird flu.
Well, I heard it. One of my friends gave me these beautiful eagle feathers because she was coming and we were doing like some work with each other, and she
Yeah.
said, "Don't worry, I put them in the freezer. There's no parasites on them." And I'm like, I wouldn't have even thought of that because we pick up feathers all the time. Exactly. I was just like, oh, thank you for doing that, but I just, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
So did you find seeing this gap, between kids, not being in nature, is that
Yeah.
what drove you to put this soil book together and the soil kit and create that?
It's a good question. I think a lot of things drove me to want Life Rocks to address some of these problems. One of them was that when I found my healing in nature, when I found my center point of balance through learning about nature, learning about biology, learning about biochemistry, learning about earth sciences, botany, geology, volcanoes, marine environments, like this stuff lit me up so much that I felt connected to the environment in ways that I didn't think possible in childhood, where I was like, holy crap, if this part of my brain was switched on when I was a lot younger, maybe I'd be inventing science machines by now. Maybe I'd, be on a totally different path.
Trajectory, yeah.
But because I kind of had the journey from being in my own perspective somewhat disconnected, somewhat unhealthy, somewhat out of touch with like my values or my dreams at points during childhood, it was seeing the remedy in nature that made me go, I want to promote that. That's important. That I want to pay that forward to the child that could have it earlier than I did, so they can go through less suffering. It's definitely part of my core mission. Another part of it was seeing other people suffering when I was growing up, and seeing children and my peers in much worse situations than I was. I had loving parents. I had loving parents who were basically hippies from the 60s, who, very emotionally aware, very caring. Sure, mum was a helicopter parent, hands down. She was, we called her the fear police or something like that. I can't remember the term right now, but she's the fun police, the safety police.
Yeah.
That was it, and that mum's changed over the years, because she's gone, okay, my son's grown up now. He didn't turn out to be,
that wayward I thought he would be.
yeah, and he's safe. He didn't break any bones other than a finger or whatever. So, but I had loving parents. I had friends who had parents that were not so loving. I had parents who had friends that were complete raging alcoholics or drug addicts. I had friends whose parents were just in very poor financial situation, much worse than my family. So, and then I saw the results of all of that disconnection. Parents who didn't care about regulating screen time, parents who didn't care about regulating their diet, and they were just feeding my friends Fruit Loops and Cocoa Pops. Friends who didn't, parents of friends who didn't care about them enough, kind of just let them be too much, too free range, without a strong value system. I think my parents had a very strong sense of morality and values that, whether or they tried to or not impose it upon me, it's just sort of comes off of them, as where I saw these other friends end up having childhoods that were disconnected from nature because their parents were totally disconnected from nature and reality, and that led to things like suicide, lifelong health issues, chronic conditions, and that really upset me. And early on I decided, I'm like, I don't want this to happen to people, and it's preventable, and our whole culture just doesn't understand this stuff. And at the funeral of some of those friends, I was like, holy crap, all the adults all of the so-called leaders of our culture have no idea how this happened. I know how it happened, and that was a
Catalyst.
catalyst, and it always stuck with me. So I think they're the two biggest driving forces is, my own personal story of healing, and then seeing the culture and seeing the friends around me absolutely flailing at trying to figure this stuff out and not having, the parents or the adults of this world representing it properly. So I was like, well, I guess it's going to be my cross to bear.
It's not a bad one. You at least enjoy
No,
it.
totally. And I don't want to be throwing in pseudo-Christian references of suffering and sacrifice on the end here. But, anyone who's been in business knows that it's hard, and that to do and affect change in the world, you have to be persistent and you have to keep on showing up. And I'm really lucky that, I've found what I've found, and I've connected to a universal mission. I believe that, the mission of Life Rocks is a universal mission that people like yourself or people like the founder of Life Rocks ultimately know in their hearts that protecting childhood development, and protecting the earth through raising up our general awareness of what the earth is and also what ourselves are is the most important thing that we can do for each other.
Agreed. And being a parent, definitely seeing all the work I've had to do to heal my inner child. And I'm the same. I have very loving parents. I can't complain about growing up or anything. But at the same time, it was just, I had more than I realized what was going on. I had gifts I didn't understand. It is what it is. But at the same time, now, it's catching yourself when you fall back into those patterns and go, no, it's okay to feel. It's okay to, just want to go outside, and it's okay to not put your shoes on. It's okay, and being safe with that, and not wanting your child to have to do all that inner child work to reconnect to that beautiful innocence. And I laugh because most of my day when I'm working as a speech therapist, I am playing with kids with toys all day. Yeah. I'm playing with the Bluey house, and I'm, we're drawing dragons, and boys will always bring up poo and farts. It's just how it is,
Yeah.
and being okay with that. And it's funny because a lot of my clients' parents will freak out as soon as they said, oh, that's a poo or that's a fart. I'm like, so what? It's part of life, and let's just roll with that, and let's just be like that. So, it's about, if we can set our kids up now and have that beautiful foundation, or even help them work through things, it's never too late. I want to emphasize that. It's never too late. But, so then they don't have to do all the work that we're doing now. Yeah.
Isn't it our hope that every generation builds to somewhere better?
Yeah.
And
That's beautiful. Yeah.
I think we do. I think there's part of us that is improving. That part of us is this awareness piece. And our generation now has more access to consolidated information distilled by multiple generations of people at our fingertips. We also have so much saturation and so much noise, so there's an increased difficulty level in being able to sit down and focus on it all.
Yeah.
But you can do it. We can do it. And the challenges that our parents faced were different.
Mm-hmm. They didn't have Facebook and Instagram and, YouTube and, you can just, click of a finger, you can Google something, but that's not necessarily information that you're meant to have. And like you said, it can be noise. Yeah.
Parents don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And they cannot be blamed for that. And the information that I've found on childhood development and technology and biology and biochemistry, earth science, all this stuff is stuff that was so much harder to consolidate and access and compile and get across, even in the 90s, even in the early 2000s. I cannot ever blame my parents for not knowing that stuff. I can only see that I am a progression of, what was given to me. which was loving, caring, kindness, and, focused care.
Well, I think
So if we're going to build on it, what does come next, and what are we contributing?
yeah, and it's having that compassion with yourself too, that you just knew what you knew at the time, and now you know different, so now you can make better choices.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we really have to take to heart, being humans, is that we only know what we know at the time, and we act on what we know at the time. But it's when you know better and still don't choose to act of it, that then you'll fall into that victim model, and you need to step out of that and then really have that grace and compassion with yourself, and know that you can empower yourself to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, look, and it's for those of our generation, of the millennials or the Gen Gen Xers out there that are kind of thinking, I don't want to have kids because the planet's all screwed up and we're all in therapy and we're all broke and I
We
think
can't own anything.
yeah. So there's all that noise that our generation faces in connecting to family values and doing all of that stuff, but it's not insurmountable, and that's our generation's challenges to face, and
Yeah, and I guess it's about leading by example too. If you see something that doesn't sit with you and it doesn't feel right for you, then you make the change. Like you saw, when you went to the funeral, you knew what the breakdown was, and you chose to make that change. Yeah. And it's when you have that information and you have that power and belief in yourself to do those changes, that's going to change our world. That is what's going to heal things.
Yeah. It reminds me, this conversation of the differences here in challenges. Our generation, those of us who are go-getters and want to, improve the conditions and build upon our
state, world.
Yeah, improve our situation.
Yeah.
They kind of realize that we've had to re-engineer all of the major conventional pathways to getting what we want, and take back our responsibility from the system instruments that the previous generations could more reliably count on to do their thing. So in the 70s, I think it was the 70s, Gough Whitlam, had free education, university. Medicare, it was all subsidized, it was all working well. Okay, great. The economy wasn't hyperinflated. Okay, great. The medical system wasn't doing experimental, strange things on, the entire population. Great, that was awesome. So there were all of these factors where that generation had more inherent trust. There wasn't as much censorship in the media. There was more honest journalism, and that was shown through things like reporting on Vietnam War, reporting on Tiananmen Square, reporting on important issues that were going on that actually stopped these wars because the public's involvement through media that hadn't happened in the past. So there was this golden era, I think, from 60s through to the 90s, where that was an all-time high trust in institutions of medicine, politics, finance, blah, blah, blah. We have seen all of that completely crumble and be revealed to be the safe house for nepotism, being, nepotism meaning just institutional clubs that only feather their own nest.
Yeah.
And that's happened now in all departments. Agriculture, it's happened in medicine, it's happened in education, religion, finance. So our generation doesn't trust any of that. We've had to go and reclaim our responsibility from all of these things. That's seen in the homeschool movement, where parents are going, stuff the conventional schooling model. We're going to unschool our kids. We're going to teach our kids what's important. We're going to create our own curriculum. It's being seen in the holistic health movement, where people are, becoming their own health practitioners and using preventative medicine rather than, drug interventions. And
Well, it's even been seen in finance. More and more people are looking for other ways to invest their money and invest their cash.
That's
and
right.
different ways to get paid.
Yep.
Because they're not trusting what's been going on with the banks and the information coming out and things like that, which is why I feel that crypto movement has been so strong.
Yeah.
Because people are like, there's something else, and that people are now looking back at gold and silver because, you know, that has that solid backing behind it and things like that. And then it comes back to as well, I know a lot of people I work with, we do exchanges, we do energy exchanges, we barter.
Yep.
You know, hey, I need this healing, you can offer me that, and I can offer you this. Let's have this beautiful energy exchange and have this lovely, you know, we're paying each other in energy,
Yeah.
you know, rather than this physical currency that has whatever meaning you want to put to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Decentralized finance and the whole crypto thing, people taking responsibility back for their own money. So I think that when the human mind decides, oh, that's not important, that's just someone else's job, we're atrophying part of our inherent makeup.
Intuition.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
part of our brain that is geared towards understanding mathematics and finance. There's a part of our brain that's geared towards observing phenomena in nature. There's a part of our brain that is geared towards understanding our biology in a rudimentary enough way so that we have a connection to our food and our environment in a meaningful way. When previous generations and when people outsource that responsibility to all of the experts, they are switching off their curiosity, they are switching off their wonder, they are switching off their brain. And all the research points to the fact that if someone is not curious about a certain subject and they have decided that a certain subject is the way that it is, or they've just gone, oh yeah, I don't care about that subject, or I don't want to learn about that, or that's not my thing, that on a brain scan looks like a dead brain.
And it was funny, before we started recording this interview, we were talking about how if you don't use your brain, you actually start to atrophy and you lose it. So this is where dementia is on the rise,
Yeah.
and Alzheimer's and things like that, because we're not utilizing all of our brain like we used to. We're not tapping into all of it. And even when you're talking about food and what we eat and trusting people, you know, I'm a big believer on learning how to read your own body and eat intuitively. You know, I know there's fixed diets and things like that, but that doesn't work for everybody.
No.
Like, you know, I don't eat meat, and it's not because I don't want to eat meat. My body doesn't like it. It makes me so unwell when I eat it, and I find other ways to get protein into me and things like that. But, you know, I'm not saying I'm a vegetarian and being part of a movement. I'm saying I'm a vegetarian because my body intuitively can't process the meat for whatever reason, which I'm working through, you know. So it's about taking back that sovereignty of yourself and reclaiming who you are and taking back your power rather than giving it out to everybody and letting your brain atrophy, letting your body atrophy, rather than listening to what you need to heal yourself.
Yeah, totally. And aren't kids the masters of intuition? And if we equip them with, okay, what does your tummy tell you? What does your head tell you? What does your heart tell you?
How does that feel?
How does that feel? Where do you feel it? These are ways in which we can entrain ourselves, each other, into learning and listening to those intelligence centers, that there's more information coming through them that we can intellectually decide upon, and using our combined intelligence rather than, oh, but the doctor said that blah blah. It's like, okay, sure, well then just take the pills then if that's what you want to do. But if we equip our kids with those sensed intelligences, then they're going to be better able to regulate their food. They're going to be better to regulate how much light and movement they need and how much social time they need, and be just aware of their own equilibrium.
Yeah, and even having my little one, he will take himself to his room when he needs just some time out from people, you know, and even he won't say hello to people, which frustrates us, but he just says to us, it's just overwhelming with that much energy. And just knowing that that's why he's not saying hello. But I can't tell necessarily everybody that, because they'll just go, what? What do you mean? But for him, he recognizes it in that himself, where if there's more than 2 adults, he gets overwhelmed with how much energy everyone's bringing. Yeah. So, you know, it's letting him be with that, but then also try and go, but can you just say hi back or wave or something? So that's my beliefs coming through at the same time going, oh, you know, so it's still a learning curve, and just, you know, let him trust that intuition too, and letting him be.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, you know, parents get very thingy about developmental goals or outcomes, and being like, oh, we're not reading by this point. We're meant to be saying hi and making great eye contact by this point. There's, you know, truth to all of that stuff. And it's important to understand and recognize those things. But yeah, giving a child their own sense of autonomy and their own sense to make decisions without that anxiety over their head, that's what you want in a child, is an independent thinker, because they're going to be a lot happier in the long term.
Yeah, and it's those critical thinkers we want in this world, because they're going to challenge things and help us step outside those boxes that we've been taught to think in.
Yeah.
And that's will make big changes too, right? Because instead of saying, oh, we can't do that, you go, but why not?
Yeah.
You know, why, if we don't look at it from a different angle, can we not challenge that and, you know, bring that into that, and, you know, just have that different way of thinking, which, you know, even when I've looked at the soil book that you guys created, just getting kids to think, oh, there's all this stuff happening in our soil, you know, like, when, rather than, oh, it's just dirt.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and that's that engagement piece, is, so to the person who's decided, oh, I'm not into soils, I'm not into plants, I'm more of a TV person. Like, I don't know what they're thinking, but like, they've decided in their brain, I don't really like the outdoors much. I'm more of a cars person or something. Whatever.
Or I'm a city person. Yeah.
As soon as that internal decision is made, that category of life over there is somewhat meaningless to me on my journey, that's like them shutting a door, and no more information's really going to come through, because we've signaled to the brain, like, we don't really care about that.
Well, I have a good example about this. So we've been talking about going camping, and I've been so anti-camping a big chunk of my life, because I went to all these camps when I was at school, and it was just horrific experiences. And then my husband's like, you know, you're going to sleep on the ground. I said, yeah, we have to get this and get this and then get this. And all of a sudden my brain's like, I just want to sleep outside the stars and not have any interference. You know, that's the biggest thing. My body wants to do that. It wants to crave to do that. But then before that, I was just like, no, I don't camp.
Yeah.
You know, I put that sign up.
Yeah.
Went, no, I don't camp. But all of a sudden I'm like, no, I want to.
Great. Yeah. That's a great example.
Yeah.
My mum is a self-proclaimed anti-camper.
Yeah.
She will die before camping.
Yeah.
And I should make her a t-shirt that says that. Death before camping. But, you know, that's a decision that she's made. I don't think that overall it does much good to her connection to nature, but it's a lifelong habit of thinking like that. And then alongside that comes the lifelong habits of, I don't like bugs, I don't like humidity to wreck my hair, I don't like wind to wreck my hairdo. And then, you know, so there's a cluster of like decisions that have led to like, the anti-camping vibe.
That's it. And even I went through this period in my life where I was like, I don't want to go to the beach because I don't want to deal with the sand. Yeah. Whereas when I was stuck back, I'm like, why did I stop going to the beach? You know, and then when I went back, I was like, why did I stop going to the beach? Like, who cares? That's just, you just expect the sand and you just work through that. It's like if you go camping, you expect the bugs.
Totally.
And you just bring the natural citronella and the natural repellents. And have that prepared. You know, you just make peace with that. And I guess that's, you know, part of healing yourself as well. Is like, why do I think that? You know, that's not resonating with me anymore. It's okay to let that go and change.
Yeah, we sensitize our things to we sensitize ourselves to things based upon the decisions that we make internally. And one person might decide, oh, this sand is so annoying, and their mind doubles down on the sand being annoying, which magnifies it.
Yeah.
Or the other person decides, oh, well, a bit of sand's worth it for all of these other things that are at the beach. And then the brain minimizes the stress response to sand, and they both amplify through time. So yeah, as long as we're aware of that scenario, they've done studies on stress, and they prime each group with a little 3-minute video before the study's gone on. And it sounds like you know what I'm about to say, but
Continue.
one group is told stress is stressful, all stress is bad, all stress is going to age you, it's going to deplete you, it's, you know, it's bad for you. And then the other group is told some stress is good because it grows you, it challenges you, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger in a bunch of circumstances, and that actually, you know, some amount of stress is good for you. They tracked the health outcomes of these two groups over a number of years, and the people who had installed that belief system that some amount of stress in their life was beneficial had better health outcomes in all areas. So, you know, what stories are we telling ourselves about the stuff that we do? And then can we tell ourselves to lean in to the uncomfortable aspects of life, to reframe in our brain, look, sand's not that bad, insects aren't that bad.
Just roll with it.
Just roll with it, and then and then it gets easier from that point onwards.
Well, it's funny you bring up that study, because there's another one done with kids, and they had these three children, like 3 groups.
Yeah.
And one group, they only got praised when they got it right.
Right.
One group got praised like, oh, good job, you're trying, blah, blah, blah. And the other one just got praised for doing it, right? And then they followed them, and the ones that had, you know, only got praised for doing it right, they ended up with all these complexes, like unless it was perfect, it wasn't okay, you know, and then they went through life and they would beat themselves up. But then the group that just got praised for trying, rather than the outcome, the actual effort, they were the most chill adults. They rode with life. They were the most successful, you know, because it's not that whole, it was that perspective. It's like, if I just give it a go and see what happens, doesn't matter what the outcome is.
Yeah.
I'm putting myself in it, and I'm letting myself be. Same with the stress, right? So, a bit of stress is okay. It's not going to, you know, it's going to make me stronger or whatever it might be, but it's a better outcome than,
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's another cool study, and really interesting to think on. We can take that so many different areas. We're so prone to programming. I feel sorry for the kids who are in those studies. It's like, oh, who chose which group I was going to be in? You know, like pretty serious stuff.
I guess it's like when they do drug trials and you hope you're not the placebo or that sort of thing, right? So it's just the luck of however it rolls out. But
yeah.
Anyway, so whenever I have someone on the show, Asher, I always ask if they could leave one healing message for the world. They could heal one thing in the world. What would it be?
Yeah, good question. I would like to say that if we could have the awareness installed right to the core of the education system, right to the core of the way we teach, the way we think about raising children, if we can install 2 things in that space, curiosity and wonder, I think that the entire world would eventually shift, and we should have curiosity and wonder replacing academic achievement and career outcomes. Because I tell you what, a person who is fueled by curiosity and wonder is in a constant state of learning and growth. They are absorbing more information than anyone else who is not in a state of that. They are programming themselves with immense amounts of connectivity, positive emotion, and what is more curiosity and wonder provoking than all of the events of nature happening both in the outer world and the inner world of the true nature of this world and the true nature of ourselves. And if we understood what the brain science now knows about those states of emotion, wonder and curiosity, the world will be a very, very different place. So focus on bringing those about in yourself, in those around you, in the way you think, the way you engage with the world, and everything that we need to bring about in the education system.
Yeah, and if you're a parent, let that space be there for your kids, right? Yeah, definitely. Yeah. All right, thank you so much, Asher. We've delved down many, many holes.
Yeah.
And for anyone that wants to get contact with Asher, you can look up liferocks.school, or you can look at the show notes and connect with him through social media and many other outlets. So thank you so much for your time today, Asher. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Catherine. It's been a pleasure, and keep on doing great podcasts and putting good info out to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We have so much love and gratitude that you have taken the time out of your day to empower you on your healing journey. The views shared by the person being interviewed might not necessarily reflect that of the host and should be used at your own discernment. Trust what resonates for you and follow your heart and soul guidance. If you have any underlying medical conditions or mental health issues, please consult with your healthcare provider before pursuing any of the recommendations. Likewise, you can always contact the person being interviewed to find out more information. This can be found in the show notes. Remember to activate, align, heal, empower, and find love in everything that you do.